Good evening. Welcome to our One Love Consciousness Movement First Unity Spiritual Campus Midweek Connection. What an honor it is to be with all of you. I'm thankful for each and every one of you. This has been a very powerful and interesting week. It's been a wonderful week. A lot of moving parts. There's so much happening in my world. There's so much happening in the whole world, but there's so much going on in my world. A lot of transition, a lot of movement, and some of it is the kind that you go, man, I know it's going to make me grow, but God, it kind of sucks. And other parts are just very fascinating. Let me get into a little bit of it as I'm not going to hold you real late this evening. I just kind of want to share, just do a little heart sharing, okay? Not necessarily methodical sort of sermon or message, but just a little bit of heart sharing. Last Thursday morning, a friend of ours, she went in for a pretty basic surgery. She was under, and the whole thing from start to finish was about 3.5 or 4 hours. And when she arrived back home, she seemed to be doing okay. Her husband picked her up and took her home. And she seemed to be doing okay. And that was around 4:30. And by 6:30, the paramedics were on their way. And John, the husband, was doing compressions, CPR, and trying to get a pulse while the paramedics were on their way. The paramedics arrived. They did the same thing for about 30 minutes until they could get a pulse. Then they threw her in the ambulance, of course, and took her to the hospital. Well, by the time she got to the hospital and all was said and done, and they got her onto the machines, she had been without oxygen for almost an hour. That is, at 8 minutes, they say, medical professionals say, at 8 minutes, you have experienced some kind of brain damage. Of course, at an hour, based on what transpired, it was irreversible brain damage. And so she was determined by the first grouping of doctors to be essentially brain dead. They wanted to get a second opinion. It took a while for the second opinion to come through. The second opinion on the next day was the same. She was an organ donor, so they kept her on machines to keep her circulation going and enough oxygen in the body to keep the organs vibrant. And then on Saturday, I went down on Friday, and then Carrie and I both went down to the hospital to be with them. And on Saturday, they did a tremendously powerful, really life-changing ceremony for me. I've not experienced this. In this end of October, 1st of November, I'll be celebrating 30 years ordained as a minister. I've been at people's bedsides. I have been with people during emergencies. I've been to so many emergency room visits, I've lost count. And then people who've had loved ones transitioning due to sickness, chronic illness, and those kinds of things. So I've experienced that. But this was the first time I had experienced something quite like this. And we actually got to escort her down the hall to the operating room to have her organs harvested. And she was able to I know for sure donated 2 kidneys, saving 2 people's life. And she was that kind of a person in life too. I'm saying this to lead somewhere. It was shocking. It was surprising. It's not the kind of thing that you look for. It's not like she had this long-term sickness. In fact, the week before that, we had been having dinner with them both because she had decided for her husband's 80th birthday, John, that she was going to do a birthday tour. So they went up to visit family in Tallahassee. They did some things in Clearwater, and then decided that they wanted to have dinner with us as well as a part of that tour. So we had just had dinner with them the week before, and she had decided to make a really large donation to First Unity Spiritual Campus to make sure that the people who had volunteered and been a part of the big move that we made in our location change, make sure that those folks felt celebrated. So this was shocking. It's still shocking. Our campus is dealing with the shock. John has been a member of First Unity Spiritual Campus for over 35 years. And then his relationship with Anna has been ongoing for almost 10 years, or a little more than 10 years. They've been married about 9 or 10 years, I believe. And she's been with him at First Unity the whole time. She's just been a wonderful, bright light. So our campus is even grieving those who knew them and knew her and know John. So that was a surprise. But in the midst of the surprise, there's so much beauty that happens. And I'm going through the cycle of what I think about death. And I've shared with you before that, I don't believe that death is the end of life, or it's even the opposite of life. I believe that death, we could possibly say in our human experience, is the opposite of birth, but it's not the opposite of life. As Einstein said, everything is energy, and you can't create it or destroy it. It just is. It can change shape, but it doesn't end. And so Anna, in some way, is with us. We have experienced and felt her with us. Last evening, we took those volunteers out to dinner. Because of Anna's donation, we took them out to dinner to celebrate them, and in many ways I believe she was there with us. Not just the vibration of her donation, but also just her presence. And then, as I'm with you this evening, I have just left about 2 or 3 hours ago from a celebration of life by a woman who is just such a bright light, Maura Lara. And she is still with us on this side, but her diagnosis is terminal cancer. And I could tell by her activity today and her movement that she's very weak in her body, but she's strong in her spirit. And this is also something that I have not experienced in over 30 years of ministry, but 30 years of ordained ministry. She decided, instead of taking treatments, chemical treatments, and pain medications and those kinds, she decided to do things her way, including putting together and forming and being a part of her own celebration of life. She is still alive physically, but she has decided to walk right up to the face of death and have her own celebration of life, almost in the face of death, have her own celebration of life, host it, direct it, and be at it. So when I left there a moment ago, she's getting prepared to go back to California, which is where she's from. She was a part of Agape Church, so she's going back to decide to exit this physical life and have Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith do that closing of her life. So I'm in the midst of participating in a funeral, a memorial service, a celebration of life. There's different terms for it, for someone who decided to do it her way and be a part of her own celebration of life. And we've seen this death thing happen twice in less than a week, but they're so different and yet similar in that there's this power over death that Anna believed in. She believed that life was eternal, that she was an eternal divine being. And Maura feels the same way, believes this. It's a different level of vibration is what I'm saying. And so I sat down and wrote this today, and I felt like that this maybe would minister to some of us this evening. Because one of the things that ministered to me was that one of my teachers, Dr. Wayne Dyer, on the day before he transitioned during the night, he essentially said goodbye to his children, to the people around him in his own way. And he had kind of always taught that when his Dharma was complete, when he was complete with his mission, he would return to sender. He would say things like, we all come here with a round trip ticket. And at some point, I'm going to check out of this human expression and back into my eternal beingness. Many of us in this country are so afraid of death that we never really live. We're so fearful of what might happen that many of us don't step out in faith and really live this life. I've told you my own experience, and I don't want to dramatize it, but in February of 21, I contracted COVID and walked up to death's door, according to the doctor, when I arrived at the hospital and spent time in the hospital with double COVID pneumonia. It had infiltrated my organs, internal organs. I was running 104 temperature, I had depleted all of the salts out of my system. I didn't know that. I was so thirsty. I was drinking one bottle of water after another and not eating anything as a result of that. I had reduced my sodium levels to like 111. So, they were concerned about my health. Obviously, they had me hooked up to all kinds of stuff. And I remember the doctor saying, if you had have waited 12, 18 hours, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So I'm glad you came in when you did. And he said over the next 6 or 7 hours, it's going to be really touchy what transpires. And I can't make any promises. We're going to do the best that we can. Though that's the way he's talking to me. As I'm sitting I'm lying down in an emergency room with cots and gurneys everywhere, beds all lining the halls of this emergency room. I never did get a room in the COVID wing because it was completely full. And so I'm in there, and the doctor says this to me: "We're going to do our best, but you're already exhausted. You're tired. You're sick. We're going to do our best." And I remember there being this peace that passed my intellectual understanding, even with receiving that news. And I'm not comparing myself to what happened. I'm leading to a point. And I remember him saying that, and I remember my words to him because he looked at me very strange. And I was not delirious when I said it. I really felt it. And I said to him, "This is my car. You're the mechanic. You do what's necessary. And if I live, I live. And if I don't, I don't. I'm good." And I remember saying it with such conviction because I believed if this was what was left of my journey here, fine. Then I must have fulfilled my mission on this planet. That experience left me with absolutely no fear of death. I don't fear death. It's not because, and I don't live haphazardly. I just mean I believe that I'm fully alive now. I got thrust into the highest level of my own personal ministry, my own personal calling and dharma. And I'm completely unafraid of physical death anymore. And here's the part that I wanted to get to for this evening. I believe that through affirmative prayer, meditation, life visioning, living these principles that we talk about, we can actually get to the place where we manage our emotions so well that we never reach the level of commotion, that we are able to walk away from the drama and the trauma and walk into the stillness and the peace that passes all understanding by learning how to manage our emotions. If you don't manage your emotions, you'll be mismanaged by them. And so I wrote this down today. I've come to realize just how easily I used to become entangled in interpreting everything that happened in my life through my emotions, and that often led me down a path, check this out, of irrational thoughts, irrational beliefs, and irrational behaviors. I wasn't able to think in terms of solution because I was too wrapped up in filtering everything through my emotions. This is why Dr. Beckwith says this, and I agree with it. When something is happening that it feels overwhelming and like it's going to destroy you, instead of getting freaked out by it, ask what is real here. In fact, maybe say, "Holy Spirit, show me what is real," with a capital R. What is really real in this situation? And worst case scenario, pray the word help, which just means holy, eternal help means holy, eternal, loving presence, or hello, eternal, loving presence. And when I'm saying hello to the eternal, loving presence, I'm activating that vibration in my life. I'm simply calling it to the forefront, and I'm believing that the solution will be answered by the ultimate solver of every problem. And so you don't have to live your life as a problem solver. You live your life as the walking solution. Some people are proud of being problem solvers, but here's the only issue with that. If you're a problem solver, that's your dharma, you're always going to be walking about with problems. Instead, you can be a solution. I know that the answer is already within me. I know that good is already lining up for me because God is doing that. I know that love is coming my way. I know that every need is being supplied. I know this, and I live in that knowledge, and I affirm this. And my prayers, instead of being begging and petitions, my prayers become affirmations and announcements of the divine presence that's in me. But I used to make irrational decisions because I had irrational thoughts, irrational beliefs, and irrational behaviors, filtering everything through my emotions. If we get our emotions under the management of our spirit, we will stave off the commotion and we will live in a perpetual state of stillness and peace. And ultimately, it will lead us to a perpetual state of bliss. In the past, I would construct entire personal dialogues and personal ideas based in irrationalities, based in a mindlessness way of being. Because I did not invoke the mind of Christ, I was invoking the mind of crisis. If you'll trade in the mind of crisis for the mind of Christness, you will start seeing solutions. You'll start seeing answers coming, a lot of times even before the question arrives. Because you'll start living less reactive and more proactive. As I've grown, I've learned to cultivate a real sense of reason. And instead of having seasonal reasoning, I've learned to live through daily reasoning. And here's how you do it. You build yourself up on your most holy faith. You build up the reason muscle because you're learning how to exercise positivity, solution. You're not looking for the bad, but you're looking for the good in everything. So that even when the bad arises, you have already built up that good solution muscle in your body, and you start to cultivate a sense of reason, and you begin to have a newfound level of empathy in your life and a newfound level of sensitivity to the Spirit, so that you learn when to back out of your ego and let Spirit do the answering to the question, and let Spirit, what does it say in the recovery movement? You learn how to let go and let the God in you answer the question. And this is what I believe it means when it says, thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, or in this earth space as it is in the heavenly space. So the will of God begins to be apparent in your life because you've cultivated and built a sensitivity to it, so that you're not entangled in your emotions anymore and tied up and chained by the commotion, because you already know that every question, the other side of the coin is an answer. Every problem, the other side of the coin is a solution. And you know that all you have to do is flip the coin or flip the script. Take the prescription that I'm offering to you today. Build yourself up on your most holy faith. Bring yourself constantly in remembrance of your royalty, in remembrance of your divinity. And that will build an immunity. You'll become impervious to the craziness of the world around you, but you'll be immune to the virus of emotional and commotional way of living. And you will find yourself actually witnessing the craziness of humanity only from a distance. And I wrote it this way: it is fascinating to witness the intricacies of human thought and behavior from a more rational, and I'll call it Christ foundational standpoint, rather than being swept away constantly by the emotions and the commotions. I've learned that the rationality of the Christ mind gives me the ability to be inside of the boat instead of underneath the waves that seem to roll in with the storms of life. There are going to be storms. Give an example. Jesus and the disciples are what? They're on a boat. They're in a storm. It looks like the storm is going to destroy them. But Jesus is asleep in the bottom of the boat. He's like, guys, we're not in the water. See, this is what it means to be in the world, but not of the world. We're not in the water itself. These waves are not going to overtake us. We're in a boat on the water. So how do I find a way to use the storm for surfing rather than drowning? I have the ability. I have the vehicle already. The vehicle is the joy of the Lord is my strength. The vehicle is the Spirit is within me, through me, and operating as me. The vehicle is I know I am divine at the core of my being. The vehicle, the boat that rides on the waves and the storms of life, in the sea of life, that boat of protection is my ark. Even in the midst of the flood, I have an ark, so that I'm able to ride on the storm rather than be overridden by the storm. So, I bring us back to this. Through the power of the presence of God that's within us, through the power of this anointing, this vibrational energy of divinity, we can learn to manage our emotions and not be mismanaged by them. And I can take the emotions and stop it at the gate of my soul, so that I don't get into commotion. And as a result of that, I love words, I will experience a promotion into my Christed self and live a more peaceful life full of stillness. So that's what I wanted to share with you. What I've experienced over the last few days with these wonderful people, Anna Lona Stoner, transitioning, and giving all the way up till the end of her life journey, her human life journey. And then Maura doing it her way. I mean, we probably should have played the song by Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way. Doing it her way. Deciding, because St. Paul said the last enemy that we face is death. He didn't say you have to die physically, though, to face that enemy. So you can be so intentional with your life that you're able to go ahead and look death in the face and say, you're not that big of a deal. Because I am the resurrection and the life. The I am is within me. So the grave does not stop me. That grave removes the skin suit, that experience removes the skin suit and frees my spirit. In some ways, I can't remember the poet who said this, but basically he said pretty much we're incarcerated in these bags of bones, in the cells. We're kind of behind the cell door, almost condemned, I think was the word he used, condemned to the incarceration within these bodies. So the bodies may be limited, but the spirit is unlimited. You are an unlimited being walking around in an elementary and sometimes limited physicality. But contact your real self. Make conscious contact with your divine self. Live from a place of peace. You might be even surprised at how many limitations you can remove in your physical world by removing the limitations in your mind. So consider that this evening. To manage your emotions and to stop being mismanaged by them, so that you can move from commotion to the witness of your emotions. And instead of filtering everything through your emotions, filter everything through the Christ mind, then you won't be living in crisis state of mind. And that's just a thought as I've experienced these things over the last week. So I honor you and I thank you for being a part of this community. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I'm grateful for our focus this week in our meditation on love is who I am. And really what that means. We're bathing our whole essence in love. It's already within us, but we're actually bringing it forward and kind of essentially bringing it out of the anahata of the heart and soaking ourselves with this beautiful love energy. We're going to be doing that again tomorrow morning. So I encourage you to be a part of that, to practice this art over the next few weeks, because our series at First Unity, at least, is love is who I am, gratitude is my attitude, abundance is my nature, well-being is my birthright. We're digging into each one of those. So this week's going to be gratitude is my attitude. So our focus next week will be on gratitude and it being my attitude, habitually practicing gratitude. Because love, ultimately it's because, as Mr. Bill says, it's because love is who I am. Gratitude becomes my attitude and abundance my nature, well-being my birthright. But this week, it's all about love. So let's continue to stay in that attitude of love. And let love give you the ability to conquer your emotions before they become commotion. All right, my friends, I hear the music getting started, so I'm going to get up out of here now. Giving the offering tonight. It would be wonderful to raise $300 or $400 over this next few days, paying all of the bills, and I deeply appreciate that so much. I love you. I hear the music. Go and make it a great evening because you can. Peace.